Black women's health and welfare services. When black women began arriving in Britain after the Second World War to provide the newly established National Health Service with much needed labour, we came into a service which yeah, with much needed labour. We came into a service which regarded us as not as potential clients but as workers. Our role was to become the nurses, the cleaners, the cooks who would supply and maintain the service for others. From the very beginning, the NHS had one purpose: to replenish this country's labour supply with fit white male workers. 6 years of war and devastations had led to a renewed popular demand for homes fit for heroes, and this demand could not be ignored, particularly by a Labour government keen to establish itself as the champion of the working classes. The creation of the NHS enabled the needs of capitalism to be reconciled, albeit temporarily, with the demand of the people, and the import of black women's labour was the convenient short term means by which this goal would be achieved. Since we were never identified as potential consumers of the service, our health needs did not enter the debate about the kind of health provision the country would establish. The NHS was geared, first and foremost, to meeting the needs of the white man as an economic producer, and to a lesser extent, those those of the white women as reproducer. These priorities have remained enshrined within the NHS ever since. They are reflected in every facet of the service, from the allocation of its resources to the structure of its workforce. As such, our treatment within the NHS is probably the most clear and damning indictment of our social and economic value to Britain. When we approach the health service as clients, we are confronted with a setup which is both directed and controlled by white middle class men. This means that we can expect to face a barrage of assumptions about our race, class, and sex by a profession which has no interest in the maintenance of our good health and little genuine insight into the factors in our lives which cause us to fall ill. Yet, because we are women, the health service is central to our lives. We cannot avoid using it. It is us who bear the brunt of the responsibility for our own and for our families' health, and we have little choice but to deal with whatever alienation and abuse we happen to encounter. With sick children, elderly relatives, the general needs of the entire family falling squarely on our shoulders, quite apart from our many specific health needs as women, it is little wonder that we frequent the hospitals, clinics, doctors' surgeries in such disproportionate numbers, because we are working class women. We have no access to the growing number of private or natural alternatives, so favoured by those with the financial resources to go elsewhere. But above all, because we are black women, whether we seek treatment within or are outside the NHS, we invariably find ourselves dealing with a profession which is fundamentally patriarchal and racist. It is in this context that any assessment of our health in Britain has to be placed. Race, class, sex have combined to ensure that not only can we expect to fall ill more often, but in our quest for treatment, we can expect to suffer physical, cultural, social alienation with nearly every encounter. Moreover, now, the technological revolution and world recession have made capitalism's needs for fit white male workers less and less pressing. Neither the NHS nor our labour are needed anymore. Black women's health is therefore at the very bottom of the list of national health priorities. Black women for years have tolerated the lowest paid jobs and the least satisfactory working conditions. Profits have always come before the health of employees, but there is no denying that we black women have to deal with a disproportionately high share of health hazards at work. Even within the health industry, we face short term risks, long term dangers to our physical and mental well being as a direct consequence of the work that we do there. I've worked nights on the wards for years, and it really does put a strain on you. There's no question about it. You get a lot of nurses and auxiliaries who suffer from the stress related illnesses, hypertensions, heart trouble, kidney problems, high blood pressure, you name it. They all come from these broken sleep patterns from working the night shift. You can't just go home and go to sleep during the day if you've got kids. When you come in from work, you've got to get them ready for school, do the shopping, do the housework, do the washing, and by the time you've finished, it's 3 o'clock and time to collect them from school again. So you just don't get any rest. Sometimes you'll go 7 nights and days with no more than about 5 hours of unbroken sleep. And with me, I live in flats where everyone else is up and about during the day, so most of the time it's too noisy anyway. What happens is you just adapt. You just adjust in time to get less sleep than everyone else. But over the years, that takes its toll. I used to know one woman who worked 4 nights a week as an agency nurse, and on her nights off, she worked days. I suppose she needed the money like everyone else, but it really puts years on her. It really put years on her. Another thing you get among nurses is a lot of back troubles. What happens is you often find that there's only two of us on duty for the night. So if a patient has to be moved or lifted, we just have to manage it between us. If you're on a medical ward or they've put you on a geriatric, sometimes you'll get a patient of about 15 stone or maybe someone who's senile and has thrown themselves out of bed. And when one of you has gone on her break and this happens, what do you do in a situation like that? Oh, you can refuse to do it, but it's more than your job is worth. As far as they're concerned, once you're a nurse, you're meant to put the patient's needs first. That means damaging yourself in the process. It doesn't matter, you just get on with it. Outside the NHS, the situation is no better. The effects of long hours, shift work, frequent need to hold down more than one job in order to support ourselves, our families are made worse by the particular risks associated with the kind of jobs we do. As home workers, machinists, workers in garment, light engineering factories, we suffer from impaired eyesight or cataracts as a result of having to perform close eye work for years on end. In unionized work factories and sweatshops where health and safety regulations are non existent, we regularly find ourselves exposed to dangerous substances requiring heavy equipment. Because we have had to accept jobs with poor conditions or service, we often have to work through periods of sickness or pregnancy for fear of finding ourselves jobless. Today, many of the ailments which are increasingly prevalent among older black women, such as strokes, arthritis, rheumatism, can be traced directly to stressful, hazardous working conditions we have faced throughout our lives. So, despite our years of hard labour for Britain, as we approach older age, we cannot expect to reap many of the rewards. The number of elderly black women is growing daily. Although we tend to live longer than men, our chances of escaping the consequence of a lifetime of stress and hard work are slim. Our problems are often compounded by the fact that we may not have worked here long enough to qualify for a full state pension, meaning that our income is likely to be less than that of the poorest white pensioner. Even our chances of being pensioned off are greater than most in the present climate of factory and hospital closures. Black women are the first to be made redundant, and if this happens in our 40s or 50s, the likelihood of us finding alternative work is very remote, particularly when the physical consequences of a lifetime of hard work are beginning to take its toll.